Hello, everyone, and with that very familiar theme music, we're kicking off another interview here today. Director Doug here, and I'd like you to meet a very special person that is key to the success here at Discovery Mountain. He's had a role in every single episode from day one, but you've never heard a word of dialogue from him. Who could this possibly be? Miss Jean, why don't you introduce us?
Yes, very cryptic introduction, Director Doug. But our guest today absolutely has been with us around the planning table since day one, and that is Danny Colomby. Welcome, Danny.
Hi, Miss Jean and Director Doug.
Hey.
Glad to be here. Finally.
Glad to have you. Yeah, finally, right? We've been, depending on when listeners catch this interview, when it first airs, we will have been creating Discovery Mountain for over 7 years. So it's long overdue to have a chance to chat with you in this format, Danny. Of course, Doug and I talk to you all the time, but in this format.
Yeah, absolutely. Can't believe it's been that long. It's awesome.
And our listeners have heard your name in the credits of the program, every credit of every program, because as Director Doug said, you've been involved with every single one of them.
That's right.
But tell us where you are from. Just give us a little background of how we can get to know the person behind the name.
Well, currently, I live in a small northern Canadian town called Callander. And Callander is about 300 hours? No, it's 3.5 hours north of Ontario's biggest city, Toronto.
Okay.
So 20 years ago, I lived in Toronto, but I felt it was too big. And I moved to this beautiful little peaceful town here. And funny enough, it reminds me a lot of Discovery Mountain.
Oh, that's neat.
Yeah. And I only just thought of that correlation recently. After doing the show for so long. That's why I'm so comfortable doing it, because I'm living in Discovery Mountain and living here.
Living in an idyllic, kind of peaceful place, just like Discovery Mountain. I love it. That's great.
Absolutely. And it's a nice church-going town. Mm-hmm. All my friends and neighbors, they actually listen to the show. They get the show here, and they've been listening to it before I even knew they were listening to it.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
So,
really?
it's pretty neat.
That's something I didn't know.
Oh, yeah. Right around the corner. We've got friends of the family. She was excited to hear somewhere around the middle of season 1 that I was writing the music for that series. That's you? It's pretty cool. And she's in her 30s. So,
I love it.
Yeah.
So does your community have a lake as well?
We have a huge lake. We have a 214,000 acre inland sea.
Really?
But we live near a place called Callander Bay, which is probably the size of Discovery Mountain's lake, little lake.
Okay.
So it's actually an ancient crater, an old volcanic crater that filled in over the thousands of years, but it's perfectly circular when you see it from up in the air. And and we live very close to that. It takes me 50 seconds to walk down to there and take my dog for a swim.
Oh, sounds perfect. Does sound just like Discovery Mountain. Yeah, love it.
Yeah. We even have float planes landing on it from time to time.
Oh, really?
Oh,
there you go.
Bluebirdie.
Yeah. Not blue ones, but yeah.
Yeah, love it. Very nice.
Yeah.
Well, Danny, you are involved, of course, in the post-production side of Discovery Mountain episodes. So basically, what that means for our listeners is we record everything in the studio, and then first it goes to Director Doug, who takes all those audio files and fixes them up, and then he sends them off to you, and then you compose all the wonderful music. Discovery Mountain, I think, would be very ordinary without the beautiful music that you add to it. It really, really elevates it.
Well, thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely. So describe for our listeners a little bit about once you get those files, kind of what's your process like? What do you do? What are your steps?
Well, I get all those pieces from Doug, so I get his sound effects too, which is he's creating a whole atmosphere to make it sound like you're right there. So I put the sound effects and the dialogue, so the characters, the voices, and I create the story, and it all has to come out to exactly 28 minutes and 30 seconds. So
That's right.
I'm fitting things and putting commercials in there and everything. And the last thing I do after all that's done and everything's leveled and everything sounds like it's in the same world, then I go through from top to bottom and I start putting the music in. And just listening for the spots where it needs some pushing, and then I've always loved the writing, so there are some pretty big gaps there sometimes where it just doesn't need music because the story's good enough, and what's happening, it carries itself. But when we get a special moment, then I put the music in. And then after that, I do something called mastering or mixing. All those things together, the music and the voices and the sound effects and the pet sounds and everything else. And I make sure that it comes through as a final finished show. And I send it off to director Doug, who gives it a last listen to make sure that I've seen the world the way he intended it to be, dialogue wise and sound effects wise. And then with his thumbs up, then I send it off to you, Miss Jean.
Right.
And yeah,
and then
and that's the process.
And then when we receive the files, we do something, which in the industry we call QCing it. We listen to it for quality control and almost never hear anything that we have to go back and say to you guys, hey, what about this or what about that? I mean, I almost feel like I could skip that step, although it wouldn't be right of me to skip that step, so I don't. But
we've had 2 or 3 critical little moments where it was, I'm glad you stepped in. And either little problems that made it through the gauntlet. And but that's why everybody works well together. And it's a good process. Good team.
It is. It's just such a great team to work with. I've loved working with you and Doug from the very beginning. And I know you guys work together doing so many things that I'm unaware of before it ever lands back over here on my desk.
That's right.
Years ago, we've been working together for over 30 years, 31 years now, Miss Jean.
Really?
So,
oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. I mean, years and years ago, when I was actually the producer and director of a show called It Is Written, which your husband Sean used to be the speaker of up here in Canada.
That's right.
We were trying to find music for the program, and you're trying to find the stock music, and you're not finding exactly what you need. And then an acquaintance of mine who I was buying the stock music from said, "Well, why don't you give this guy Danny a call, and he's a composer, and see if he can do something." And the first show he composed for me had a bit of a Russian theme to it, and it fit perfectly. And from that point forward, we've been working together now for, like I say, 31 years. He's been doing the composition for all my programs, basically.
Wow. And you still like each other.
And we still like
absolutely. I know how he thinks.
You know how he thinks, and vice versa. I'm sure. Yeah, you guys are very in sync. Yeah. I can tell.
I still try and surprise him every once in a while, but
that's good.
Right.
Keep him on his
he's right
toes.
on it. He's sharp as a tack still. Yeah.
Well, I'm picturing you, Danny, creating all this beautiful music. And as a non-technical person, what I'm imagining, and I don't know if I'm imagining it right, is that you have some kind of a keyboard connected to your computer. Is that how you're doing it, or is there a different way? Okay.
Absolutely. Yep. I have a big 88 key, like the size of a grand piano, an electric keyboard that stretches right across my working area. And so I do, even though I'm not a piano player per se, I do all my composing and my writing on keyboard because it's physically the easiest. I play guitars and basses and drums and some woodwind instruments too, but I do pretty much most of my composing on piano.
Okay, that's awesome. Yeah. Well, and how long have you been a composer, and what inspired you to get into this line of work?
I've been composing or playing music at least. Well, I've been composing for television and radio for almost 40 years. Wow. And I'm no spring chicken. So when I was a spring chicken, I can tell you this. When I was 4 years old, my dad taught me to play a 4-string guitar. And then when I was about 8 years old, my dad taught me how to record that guitar on a reel-to-reel tape machine.
Oh, neat.
So we didn't have personal computers or anything back then. And basically I grew up through that whole techno revolution. And even helped some of the earlier manufacturers and software designers to perfect their machines and their computer programs, like the ones that I was using.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a part in that. We were right there in the inception of a lot of that.
Hmm.
And it was always fun and exciting, to see these things develop. And but my first love is music. So even though I went through the technology, my first love is always the writing and playing of the music itself.
Mm-hmm.
And the techno side and the engineering side came with it to help bring that message across.
Mm-hmm. And you have a musical family, at least your sister, Karen, who we work with for our bedtime Bible stories. She's also very musically talented. So is that something that runs in the whole family?
It does.
Okay.
So my mother played piano. My dad played piano and drums.
Mm-hmm.
We even have some famous musicians in the family. I don't know if any of these names would mean anything to anybody, but there's a famous band from the, I would say, 70s and 80s called Blood, Sweat, and Tears out of New York City. And my dad's first cousin, Bobby Colomby, that was his band.
Oh, wow.
And his brother used to be a jazz musician named Thelonious Monk, used to be Thelonious Monk's manager, Harry Colomby.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And we had an aunt in New York in the same side of the family that wrote off-Broadway plays, and she wrote a famous one off-Broadway play called Inner City, which was the first time that rap music, I guess, or dancing was actually brought to the forefront so that people would know. And there's a whole story, I won't go into it, but she was the first one to bring that to light.
Interesting.
And it was And then on my mom's side, there's another band called The Band.
Okay.
And Rick Danko was my first cousin. He was the bass player for that. And that was a world famous band. I still hear their songs on radio all the time. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Very neat.
So I couldn't get away with it I couldn't get away from it if I tried.
You were born into it. Yeah. Oh,
yes.
That's really neat. Thank you for sharing all that.
Yeah.
So, Danny, do you have a favorite food?
I do. I'm glad I got to think about this because there are so many favorite foods.
Yeah.
But I love eggs.
Okay.
And you can make them in so many different ways and they're healthy for you. And you can eat them without worrying that you've killed a living thing.
Yeah, that's
because
true.
a chicken egg, right, that you buy from the store is unfertilized, which means there's no baby chicken in there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then my second favorite food, I will say, is a nice salad. But no offense to Jake, but I don't know that I would be into trying a frog-eyed salad. All the other ones I like. I don't know. Is there that's a real thing, isn't it? A frog-eyed salad?
Thing.
Is that what it's called?
Yeah, that's right.
And is it good?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know that I've ever tried it. The recipe looks interesting with the little pasta swirls in it, but it definitely is a unique recipe. So
Okay.
I don't know how many
But
of
no
our
frog
listeners have
eyes.
tried
No
it.
frog eyes.
No frog eyes. That's right.
Okay. Well, then maybe I will try it.
Yeah. Oh, well, you have very healthy favorite foods. I love hearing that. That's neat.
Yeah.
It sounds like when you were a kid, obviously growing up in this very musical family you grew up in, you probably maybe thought about music since you were a kid, as far as a career. But were there other things that you thought you might want to do or be when you grew up?
Well, the funny thing was, because music came so naturally to me, I never thought of it as something that I would pursue as a kid. I always loved nature and animals and outdoors, and I specifically like water and I like fish. So I always wanted to be a marine biologist, to be honest with you.
Oh, that's cool.
But then as I grew up, the music I was very entrenched in music, and it felt like God's path. It's like, okay, Danny, this is what you're supposed to be doing. We've given you the gift, now use it.
Mm-hmm.
And I grew to love it in my later years. I didn't appreciate it. I didn't understand what I was doing when I was younger. But when I turned about 15 or 16, it sunk in what I had and how special it was. Yeah.
I love
It
that.
seems to be a magic age, 15. Yeah.
Yeah.
Started practicing bass in my bedroom, and I'd lock myself in there for hours working on songs and things. Never did that before.
So suddenly you had a personal interest in pursuing it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There's a neat little thing I want to mention, and this came from Stevie Wonder, who said once, he said, music I think he said something, he'd always thank God for his music.
Mm-hmm.
And music doesn't come from you, it comes through you.
Mm.
I always liked that saying, but when I was a kid, I thought, oh, come on, Stevie, give me a break. It's you. You're great. But no,
Right.
as I grow older, I get it. And it does come through you. It's a gift. And that's how you know that you're doing well in music, is because you're listening to, you're answering to God. You're listening to the voice that says this is good for all people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you're not just doing it for you or for ego reasons or anything else. You're doing it because it communicates something that's universal. That's how you know when you're doing it right. And I started to get that and realized how special it was.
Mm. I love that, because talents, and so many of our listeners are just figuring out what their talents are and what they want to use those talents for in this world. And that's really encouraging to hear that, Danny, is, looking back, you are thankful for having used your talents for good and for God. And I hope that encourages some young people.
Absolutely. And I might say too that I was lucky enough to know that at a very young age, but it could be any age. And I personally believe everybody has a special talent. Everybody, every single person on the planet has a special talent. They just have to figure out what it is. Some of them come earlier, some of them come later. Some of them you're not ready for them when you're younger. It's only something you will realize when you're older. So have patience if you haven't found yours yet, because if you live your life honestly and, you're open to listening to God's whispering in your ear, you'll find it.
Mm-hmm.
It'll come to you.
No,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yes.
Sometimes when you least expect it.
Very true. Very true. Yeah. It's very good advice.
Miss Jean, when did
Yes.
you find out that you were a writer?
Oh.
I mean, when did that happen for you?
Oh, wow. That's a good question. I think
We're interviewing Miss Jean now.
Yeah. I think the first time I remember writing something and enjoying it, I was 15 too. Interesting. I was grade 9. It was social studies class, and I wrote something, and a teacher told me how much she liked it. And I thought, really? And then it made me think about it a bit more. And then I didn't realize till I was finished university, I just had such a strong desire to write a children's book. And then that's when it really kind of latched onto me. So I was still in not yet my mid-20s. So yeah,
nice.
Happening. I think it can happen. We can maybe know what we're interested in when we're young, but it's sort of as we mature a little bit through those teenage years and into our 20s that things start to kind of fall in solidly into place for a lot of us. You're right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is that what you went to school for then later on, when you realized it was you liked that?
Well, interestingly, it was a social studies teacher. So, and I did go to school to study history. So I suppose so, in a roundabout way. But no, I never studied English formally or writing. It was just something I enjoyed doing.
Well, it shows. Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you. It's so much fun to hear the words come to life with the beautiful music and sound effects and all our talented voice actors. It's incredible.
Absolutely. I've been so surprised to hear that they're not professional. And I even asked Director Doug the other day, I said, so have any of them gone on, so it's been, 6-7 years now. Have any of them gone on to do this? Because if they haven't, they should have.
Right.
No,
Or at least attempted to,
And there's a number of them that are interested in it and possibly pursuing it. But as far as I know, so far, none of them have gone on to actually pursue acting as like, a job or something they do for the rest of their life. So
I wonder if they realize how good they are at it.
I know.
I don't know, but I'm always amazed, how this handful of amateurs that we kind of throw together from now all over the planet come together, and we may have 15 different voices in one scene, all in different places, and they all come together, and when you put it all together, they sound like they're all interacting nicely with each other. And yeah, for me,
that's a
even
Director Doug thing.
Well, I don't know so much, but for me, it's almost miraculous that when it does go together, it truly sounds like they're all sitting in the same room interacting with each other. And even though I'm in the business and I know the process, it still surprises me. And then, of course, add the music on top, and it ties it all together. And I'm always amazed at what we end up with.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's what I think you and I, Doug, are trying to do all the time. Is we're trying to listen in the headphones. We're in that world, and we want to make it sound as realistic as possible.
Absolutely.
And, Miss Jean, your stories need to be realized like that, and so
Yeah.
that's the fun of it, is making something that starts from just a thought, turning it into a reality, into a world that I wouldn't be surprised if some people actually, believe that they can hop in a car right now and drive to Discovery Mountain. Maybe they can. Maybe there is one now. I don't know.
Right.
See, I'm even doubting. Right? That's how real it is.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it is fun, isn't it? It is a joy to work on
Absolutely.
this together, for sure.
Absolutely. And every time I get an episode, it's like, okay, I'm listening just like my neighbor down the street who wants to hear what's going to happen next.
Oh, that's deep.
Okay, I'm going to dig in, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
put it all together and then listen to the story without music just to get a vibe, get the idea of it, and then away we go.
Mm-hmm. And I'm picturing you now in your Discovery Mountain-like town, and you said that you like to walk your dog to the lake. So tell us about your dog, and do you have any other pets?
Just this dog right now, but she's a handful. She's 1 year old. She's a chocolate lab retriever named Ruby.
Oh,
And she's,
cute.
besides my wife and my kids, Ruby's the love of my life.
Aw.
She's the sweetest dog. And so she's just a year old. And as a matter of fact, we were walking her the other day down a path that leads to the lake. And a couple of middle-aged ladies were jogging down there, and they stopped. They could tell something about Ruby. They just saw the way she held her body or wagged her tail or whatever. They stopped and they said hello. They weren't afraid of her at all. And one of them gave me her card and said, "We're from St. John's Ambulance and something else. And we, if you're interested, get in contact with us because we love the energy of your dog, and we'd like to bring her down so that she could meet, people that need some consoling, or those things that they do with service dogs."
Yeah.
They could see that in Ruby right away, and she's the friendliest dog. She loves other dogs. She's only a year old, but she just loves everything.
Oh, that's sweet.
A happy pup.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
great. Oh, what a neat little ministry she could have helping people.
Exactly.
Yeah, I love it.
Exactly. In keeping with the rest of the family.
Yes. So you are busy. We keep you busy, and I know you have other projects and other things that you work on besides Discovery Mountain. When you do have a little free time, what kinds of things do you like to do?
Well, I have a honey-do list from my dear wife, Miriam.
Yeah,
Takes
fair.
up much of that, but it's all stuff that I love to do because I love her and I know they make her happy.
Mm-hmm.
So we like to garden, and we have a big, lots of gardens in the back, flower gardens, and I'm about to tear down an old garage, which is going to take me a few months, I think. And we're going to make a big garden plot back there and grow more food. So we like to grow vegetables and things. So
Nice.
yeah. And Director Doug might have told you once that I used to like to fish.
Mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, in my off time before Discovery Mountain, I had lots of time off, and I became a fishing guide out on the lake,
Oh, neat.
and actually became quite known for being a fishing guide. I was a guest host on about 4 or 5 different episodes from the States, but I quit doing that because I think I'm the only guide that I've ever heard of. I mean, if you like fishing this much, who would quit because you're feeling sorry for the fish?
Oh.
Well, that was me. I felt bad for what we were doing to the fish. I mean,
wow. Yeah.
you're hurting them by hooking them. So,
Yeah.
and I'd always felt that way. And the reason I started to guide in the first place was to get between people and the fish, to show them how to handle them properly so you don't kill them.
Mm-hmm.
And it sort of worked, but I found a lot of people were very greedy about the experience, and they didn't care about the animal. They just wanted 10,000 pictures with the fish and then throw the fish back, and by then it's almost dead. So
Yeah.
I got out of that, and now I go fish watching, or I fish with lures without hooks in them.
Oh, okay.
That's something no one's
Nice.
ever heard of either. And
No.
it works. It actually works. But you don't pull them in the boat anymore, but you get them to the side of the boat where you can see them, and you wave hello and nobody gets hurt, and that's it. So I
sounds
like them for the
perfect.
animal.
Yeah.
It's not about me. It's about the animals. It's about the marine biologist that I wanted to be once.
Yes.
Right.
It's more about
Yeah.
that than it is the fishing.
Oh,
Yeah. So I got to do it all. Lucky.
Yeah. And you live in
Yeah.
the perfect part of the world to do that. Mm-hmm.
We like to bike ride too a lot. We have lots
Okay.
of bike paths here. So my wife and I
Nice.
do a lot of cycling.
Sounds
Yeah,
lovely.
lots of fun.
Really
Lots of
does.
family and friends around too.
Okay. And you mentioned your kids. Do they live close by, or where do they live?
Yes. So I have a daughter that lives in the Yukon, which is
Oh,
the
wow.
other side of Canada.
Yeah.
And she was actually from a previous marriage. But they're all friends. And then my wife had 3 kids, and they live, when son lives next door to us, and he's like my son. I love him dearly, and she has 2 daughters, and I love them dearly too. And one of them lives in Barrie, about, I guess, 2.5 hours south of us, and the other daughter lives down the street in Callander.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And then my wife's brother and sister live very close too, and all their kids, so the cousins, everybody, we get together occasionally for a campfire, or, to help each other out. And it's a nice community.
It sounds like it. It sounds wonderful. Yes. Now, here's a tough question to wrap up our time together. I don't know if you can choose, but do you have a favorite Discovery Mountain season? And if you're able to choose a favorite one, why?
Oh boy.
Right?
There have been so many of them. Let me see. Well, I don't remember which season it was. Maybe season 2. Director Doug and I were creating newest sound effects for Bluebirdie, the float plane, right?
Yeah.
And we needed the sound of the plane's pontoons hitting the water when she landed. And before I say anything else, I was thinking about this. Wonder if we should give the listeners, let the listeners guess as to how we made that sound. Make it a contest. Whoever gets closest, or the top 10 can have a free T-shirt or something. I don't know.
That would be fun.
But that was a fun process. And, we spent lots of time walking around in the bush, snapping twigs and rustling leaves and grass. And I think those earlier days were a lot of fun that way. Other than that, I've loved the camp seasons. I particularly like the camp seasons because I used to go to camp as a kid. And, everyone in Discovery Mountain singing their campfire songs and everything. That was really neat, hearing all those songs for the first time, right? And that becoming a thing. So, I love all the episodes for so many various reasons. I don't know that we have time for me to describe them all, but, I love the Bible stories. I like doing the Bible stories, and I like recreating them because it's another level in from the prevailing story of whoever the characters are in Discovery Mountain. So, and then seeing how the 2 stories are related has always been fascinating. And one of my favorite ones for me of that was doing the Jonah and the whale story.
Oh,
the
fun.
Jonah and the big fish.
Wasn't that
I
season
enjoyed that.
1?
Like me.
Right. That's
Was
right.
it? Yeah.
I think that was the very first season. Yeah.
That could have been. Yeah. So I think that's where most of my favorites come from, was the inception of everything. They stand out in my mind, and that's where the love for it all was created. And then I still put that energy into everything that we do, even to today. But I love it all. I love them all, and I look forward to doing them.
Well, thank you, Danny. We feel that you still have the same passion that you had in those early season 1, season 2, when we were still trying to figure everything out and how it all worked and what this should sound like. And,
Awesome.
and you still deliver that same energy and commitment. So thank you for that.
Oh, you're most welcome. And thank you for believing in me and letting me do that.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Well, it's been so nice chatting with you today. And to our listeners, we are all in 3 different locations. You guys are both there in Ontario. I'm here in Loveland. And hopefully, by the time you guys are done everything you're going to do, it'll sound like we're all in the same room. I believe
Indeed
that.
it will.
That's right.
It will. That's right.
Some place that resembles Discovery Mountain.
There you go. Love
in
it.
our own 3 corners of the planet.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Danny, for being with us today.
You're welcome, and thanks everybody for listening. I look forward to writing more music and putting more shows together for you.
Oh, we can't wait. We can't wait. Well, for you listening at home, thank you so much for joining us for this little chat with Danny Colomby. You have heard his name in the credits, and in fact, it's one of our listeners who recently said to Director Doug, hey, I hear the name Danny Colomby in the credits all the time. Can we get to meet him? So thank you to you, listener, for putting that wonderful idea in Director Doug's head. And thank you for joining us. Remember, God has absolutely given you a talent, just as he's given Danny that talent for music. He has given you a special talent too. You might not have identified what it is yet, but keep praying, keep exercising your faith, and God will show it to you. We'll see you next time.